Hello, everybody, and welcome to a great LinkedIn Live. Excited today to have with us, all the way from Boston, Professor Yossi Sheffi. For those of you who don't yet know Professor Sheffi, he's definitely one of my favorite people in logistics and supply chain. He's a professor at MIT. He's also the director of the Center for Logistics and Transportation at MIT. He's written a lot of books. He's been one of the leaders in the field, really, at educating and sharing with the general population, like myself included, about the wonders of supply chain and logistics. And today we are here to share about his latest book, which I have here with me, the Magic Conveyor Belt, Supply Chains, AI, and the Future of Work. And I'm sure it's going to be a super insightful discussion. So Professor Yossi, thanks for joining. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Radu. Nice to be with you.
As we were sharing a little bit before we went live, I've actually read the book. It's an easy read, but at the same time, a fascinating read. It goes through the history of supply chains in general, a lot of insightful examples. I very much found it useful, and I read it with pleasure and recommended it. Now, I want to first zero in and ask you, why did you call it the Magic? So you called it the Magic Conveyor Belt. So why is it magic, Professor?
Well, should start by why did I write the book? And this is, after the pandemic, a lot of people around the world discovered that supply chain is there. It's really what brings them food and medicine and clothes and everything that makes life worthwhile. So this is the discovery lately, and they knew that I'm working in this area, friends and neighbors, and I say, what is supply chain? Tell us. Now that we understand, everybody said that we have supply chain problem. What is supply chain? What's going on? So the first part of the book is actually trying to explain to people the complexity, what's involved in this massive global network spanning the globe. And as I said, at one point in the book, I said, you should never be angry that something on Amazon warehouse, on the shelf of the supermarket, the shelf of the store is not there. You actually be totally surprised and wowed that it's still there. Because if you understand what it takes to bring a product from the mine to hundreds of people and thousands of people involved in it to your shelf, then you'll be amazed that it's there. That's why I call it the Magic Conveyor Belt. It's conveyor belt that brings the stuff from the mine or from the field to your supermarket shelf. That was the nature. And then the book went talk about the technology in supply chain and people's jobs and all of this. But it all started from explaining what supply chains are and why they're so complex, why they're so amazing that it works. At one point in the book, I said, once you understand how big and complex and how many people in organization involved in this, and in the millions, you start understanding that it's magic, that there's no Uberlord, there's no czar that makes it all happen. It happens by itself. It's the Adam Smith hand. That's what makes it work. It's pairs of buyer, seller, buyer, seller, buyer, seller, buyer, seller that work along the supply chain, and it works. So without anybody organizing it, that's the magic.
So rightfully said. And I also remember you gave an example in the book when I think you were saying your wife, perhaps, if I remember correctly,
Yes.
went to the supermarket, and then the young teller there told her, well, sorry, we don't have product X because we have supply chain issues. And that's when your wife felt that finally people understand, or at least talk about what you do, yeah?
Yes, because it's how people always ask my wife what I do. She said he's doing research in supply chain management. Ask what is it? And then she said, a few months after the pandemic started, she had this incident in the supermarket, and she came back to me and said, now everybody knows about supply chain.
Now I can be proud.
True story. Absolutely true story.
I want to ask you, so there's a lot of questions that I have prepared. I want to ask you specifically what you mentioned about building upon the magic of the conveyor belt, yeah, and all these interconnected supply chains, which ultimately are networks of people. And you gave a lot of really interesting examples in the book, and maybe I'll ask you to share one or two that you prefer. I mean, you were talking from, a car that has thousands and thousands of parts. Now, for those parts to come together in a way that actually make the car is beyond magic, and to get all those people synchronized to produce it and to assemble it and to get all the parts at the right time. And you gave a few more examples. So maybe just let's take one of those examples, whichever you prefer, to illustrate the case.
I'll start with the one you mentioned, the car, because people buy cars and they look at what the seats are, how the navigation system work, how it drives, how it accelerates, but they have no clue what it takes to build one, what it takes to make one. And average cars, as I mentioned, is about 30,000 parts, but companies have a hard time managing 30,000 parts, so manage it in tiers. And I explain a small example that they give there is how to build a toy car. Just to give the level, how many stages are involved in making a little toy car. And it's nothing like a Ford Motor Company is about 1,800 or 2,000 direct suppliers. That's one they pay. Each one of them has dozens and hundreds of their suppliers, those of sub-supplier, sub-supplier, and sub-supplier. This is the network that kind of spans the globe. So I tried, first of all, to give an idea that how many parts involved, how many processes are involved. And I decided at one point, continue with the car. I look at one example of the catalytic converter and how many parts just the catalytic converter is made of. And then it goes to under the car, and where it's done, it goes around the world several times. It's painted the special paint in one part of the world, and then it goes to another part. And the paint is manufactured in Germany and applied in Ecuador, and it goes back. Just to understand what it takes to get that. A lot of companies are specializing in certain parts, just to explain what it takes. But then I said, yeah, people may accept the fact that car has 30,000 parts, that the aircraft maybe has 1 million parts, but just give the example that a diaper has about 50 parts, and it's actually a very technology-laden product. Just how all the layers and how it's done, it's work just right. And just to give the length of the supply chain, I followed one banana. And banana is an easy product because it comes with its own packaging. And not even growing the banana, just from the field in Costa Rica until it gets into the United States. How many stages are involved? How many people are involved? How complex it is? And the fact that, like many other food that people don't realize, very few of these are actually, that don't involve technology.
Agreed. And it's in ChatGPT. You also talk about ChatGPT. I'm not so sure that any of us knows how exactly this is going to play out, but you're one of those people that I think are closest to potentially knowing how this is going to play out. Yeah. So I got a lot of questions from my friends. They said, make sure you ask Professor Sheffi, how does this whole artificial intelligence, how is it going to play out specifically in logistics, in supply chain? How is it going to make work easier or harder? How do you see it?
Okay, so that's important question, of course. And people are anxious about it, of course. People are anxious about the job losses. People are anxious about change. People are anxious about what will happen next. The uncertainty makes people very anxious and worried. In fact, the side, I was talking to somebody from CNBC, an interviewer from CNBC, and she said, Professor Sheffi, I'm now on a ledge. I'm ready to jump. I'm so worried about my job. What will happen? I'm 48 years old. I don't know technology. What do I have to start programming computers? I don't. And first of all, get off a ledge, get a cup of tea, and let's talk. I mean, it's just, people are actually worried, and I understand this. So how is it going to play? There's a large part of the book is talking about it. So first of all, I don't think it will be bad. I just don't. I'm very optimistic about it. There are a lot of reasons why there are people, and good people, I'm talking about Bill Gates, Elon Musk, who are worried about it. I don't share it. And there are, of course, people on the other side who think it's the best thing since sliced bread. People in the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, and I think, it's nirvana. It's the new, golden age is coming. So there are, smart people on all sides who have a very different point of view. I'm more in the middle, but I'm not worried. I'm optimistic. It's clearly a new tool. Take ChatGPT, for example. So ChatGPT is something that people in universities are worried about. Oh my God, my students are writing articles with ChatGPT. What will happen? How will I be able to tell? And I say, what do you care? Do you care when your students use a spreadsheet to solve a problem? No, you don't. It's just a tool. So what you have to do now is teach them how to use it well, how to do the queries, and most importantly, how to monitor the results. Because some of the results are stupid. Some of them is what we call hallucination. It just makes stuff from that, which brings me to another issue. Some of the new jobs that will coming in the new economy, call it the ChatGPT economy or whatever you want to call it, AI-infused economy, will be monitoring. And that's a tough job. And we have to rethink how to do it because monitoring is boring. You have to monitor a process that you don't do all the time, but you have to keep the knowledge, you have to keep the experience to know when it goes wrong. That's a very tough job, and we'll have to have a psychologist and HR people thinking about how to make this job work. Example, if you drive a Cadillac CT6, it drives by itself. You can put it in auto mode, it goes by itself. You don't have to touch it. But what it has, because they're worried about you just falling asleep and just not paying attention, the minute that it has a camera that looks at your eyes, the minute that you take your eyes off the road, so first of all, the steering will start shaking. And then a few seconds later, if you don't do anything, the car goes to the side and stops. That's an example of the AI monitoring the guy who monitors the AI.
Yeah.
Just making sure that the monitoring is there. And there are other ways to ask you to do certain tasks all the time. Airplane pilots. Today, modern airliner is a drone. It can go from gate to gate with nobody doing anything. But instead of the automatic communication, the airplane can send text messages to the tower and back and operate them. It's not a problem. But no, the pilots have to communicate because the pilots have to be there. You give the pilot a job because he has to do the communication. Yes. So a lot of it is just understanding how to do it. And then one more thing about the thing. We actually, as I said, there are various points of view, and we don't know. The truth is, as Niels Bohr once said, it's very hard to predict, especially the future. So it's, it's future, it's new technology. So you try to get some reference point. And in the book, I try to look at all the industrial revolutions and what happened. And in every one of them, a few jobs were lost, many jobs were changed, but mostly a lot more jobs were created than lost. So it's true that some jobs don't exist anymore. We don't have, telephone exchange operators, that put the plug in the exchange and connect it. We don't have elevator operators. In 1945, there were 15,000 elevator operators in New York. They went on a strike, and New York came to a grinding halt. People were afraid to go to the elevator by themselves without an operator, even though the operator, if you recall, had something that they move right and left to go up and down. That's it. It was not complicated to operate, but people didn't want to do it without it. So there's AI. It's also, of course, everything is a question of acceptability. What do you accept? What society accepts? And we can talk more about this. But so some jobs are lost, but many more jobs are being created. And one of the things that the AI is doing now, why the fear? The fear is among the, I would say, educated people. As long as technology and AI took the jobs of people on the assembly line, who cares? It's them, not us. Now it's coming for us. It's coming for teacher and lawyers and an accountant, and And if you, first of all, it will make your job better because every job has parts that are drudgery and just routine, and every technology will make, at the end, will get those better because it will do a repeated job with no errors or very, very few errors, as long as you can monitor it and make sure that it does the job. And people will concentrate on the more creative part of the job, things require thinking, things that change. But I, by and large, don't see significant job losses in there. And by the way, there will be some because of the scale. If you'll be better and it's the same amount of work, you need less people. But the truth is, you'll do more work. There'll be more stuff going out. Unfortunately, in the US, more lawsuits. So it's because it's so easy now to fight because the AI can do a lot of the work. Even worse, briefs that used to be 3 pages long because you had to write them. Now it'll be 1,000 pages long because AI is writing them. So we will see some changes. Nobody wants to read, so there'll be restrictions. And by the way, you see a lot of it already. If you ask ChatGPT now how to build a Molotov cocktail, you will not get an answer because they put guardrails on certain questions. So people will guardrails on this. It's not going to be, bad. You're not going to have to read 1,000 pages email every morning. So society will adjust to this. Anyway, we can talk a lot more about it. I'm starting to.
Yeah, so I actually have, and I want to, so I'll take a quick break. I love the prelude, yeah, how you said the scene. I also love your positive, I mean, the fact that you laid down, let's not jump on off the ledge yet. Let's take a breather
Let's
and
not
drink a
jump off
coffee.
the ledge, period. Anyway.
Yeah, that's a permanent solution to a temporary problem. Now, I want to comment a little bit on what you said with the people being the ones monitoring the process. Yeah, so the AI will be obviously being able to compute way more information. They will be able to data crunch. At the same time, they might take some stupid decisions at some point because there's some deviation that only a human. They don't have context, and I love what you actually gave as an example in the book. Context is important, and I actually specifically love that example that you gave with the two publishing houses, yeah, that one, I forget now their names. Yeah.
True example. It was a case, yes.
Yeah, so maybe you tell the example because it's a good example, yeah.
Just to let people what the example is. So there have been two book publishers who published some book in biology, some, really not a bestseller book that, 3 people have to read because they do research in the area. So one of them was a premium seller, and one of them was a discount seller. And the premium seller wanted always to be a little bit higher than the discount seller, and the discount seller wanted to be just a little bit lower. So what happened is one of them started, let's say the premium, so they start with the same price. The premium said, well, that's ridiculous, and raise its price. So the discount say, okay, I want to be just below. So the premium said, that's not enough, and went higher. And the discount say, okay, I want to be just below. They went like this. At the end of the, after very short while, because it's done by algorithm, after a very short time, both books on this seller were selling for about $23 million. And at the same time, of course, other sellers were selling it for $3.50. So it's on Amazon. That's an example, and until somebody at Amazon realized what's going on and stop it. But it was for a while, for several days. The book was there for $23 million. So that's an example of context. I mean, think about what's going on around you. You sell a book for $23 million, others are selling it for $3.50 or $30, whatever. A reasonable price for a book. But that's an example of stupidity of algorithm. They're not stupid. They do what they are programmed to do. The idea was, I want to keep that much above the discount competitor. Discount competitor, I want to be just below that guy, and moving automatically. So when automatic system, they actually did exactly what they're designed to do. It's just that no context, So they went haywire.
Correct. And I've seen a high-paying job. It was a joke, but anyways, it was a high-paying job. The title was something to the extent, we need a bucket of water expert, $400,000 per annum. It was advertised as under OpenAI. And under the job description, there were just very few tasks. Number one, somebody that can pay attention for long periods of time with only one focus. It can be very boring. And then the second line was somebody that can, if we shout the word danger, danger, picks up a bucket of water and throws it on the server. And the third one was if they can also set it on fire, it's an advantage. So, it was a joke to say that, we need a person to switch off the machine if this machine turns against us and if AI goes rogue or goes sentient.
By the way, but then you said something very important, because one safety device that we need to put in this system is an off switch. Just the ability to switch it off. If these things start, people are saying, oh, it will start destroying humanity. Make sure there's an off switch. That's all. Doesn't take a lot more than that. So I'm actually, there are challenges along the way, but we see actually the fact that some people in the low middle class may be doing better, because it will be very hard to replace your, electrician or plumber to come to your home and do something, because it's so different. Everything is different. It's maybe a lot easier to replace a professor. So it's a, but then there's also, I should say, there's so many hurdles on the way. I gave before the example of something I didn't mention in the book, but I gave the example of the telephone exchange operators that used to put the plugs, this. The automatic exchange was invented in 1892. By 1950, there were 350,000 telephone operators. Only at the end of the 1980s, the job was eliminated. It took 9 decades to actually, so it's not happening fast. Part of it is the fact that, and there are, okay, before I even go there, just another example that actually this one is in the book, that ATMs, when ATMs came out, automatic teller machine, people said, okay, there will be no more tellers. Well, there's one fly in the ointment. We are now about 4 decades after, 3 or 4 decades after the introduction, the widespread introduction of ATM, and there are more than twice as many tellers as there were before ATM. How can this be? Well, there are other forces of work at work. With a lot of automatic tellers, the price of the cost of opening a bank branch went down significantly. So many more branches are open. I mean, every street that you see, this in the United States, I haven't checked lately in Germany or Singapore, but every street, yes, every third, shop on Main Street, or High Street, is a bank. I mean, there are so many banks. That's why, because it became a lot less expensive to open a bank. So that's one effect. There's also another effect of creating jobs, and this is, I give the example of the Ford assembly line. The Ford assembly line de-skilled many jobs. It used to be artisans really building cars in group, one car at a time. The assembly line came, and the jobs became a lot simpler. Just do this, cog along the block. The number of workers in Ford increased significantly from about 700 to 150,000 at the height of the Model T. But this was not the main. That's why it's so hard to predict what will happen to jobs. The main effect was that car became cheaper. The United States and then all over the world, people develop highway, hotel, motels, restaurants, millions of people employed in the hospitality industry. And this was because cars became cheaper, because we invented the assembly line. So yeah, the number of workers in Ford went up somewhat, but the bigger was in adjacent, not the main area when technology came in, but the effect of this were widespread. And there are several other examples in the book. And that's why there'll be no industries that are hard to predict now. What will they be? What will the jobs will be in this new industry? What will be the job description of, it's hard to predict, but everything that we know about history says that there'll be new industry and new jobs whenever there's a technological upheaval, ever technological improvement. So it's hard for me to say this time is different. Why? I don't see why.
So let me play. Let me play the negative for a second. So I was actually on the plane coming. So I'm now in Munich. As I was sharing with you, I was on the plane. I was sitting next to a lawyer. She hadn't really played with ChatGPT, but I told her a little bit about it. She had heard about it. She's been about 10 years within a law firm, which is, as many of us know, law firms are, you start at 8, you finish at God knows, and you grind that for about 15 years, and then luckily, they make your partner, and then you make a lot of money, and then you're
Sure.
But the point is that those 15 years are almost years in which you just learn context, and you learn, how that magic of skill. Now, whether it is law, whether it is programming, so let's take programming. ChatGPT is very good at programming, summarizing, coding, looking for errors. Now, again, if you're a very good coder, and I've seen numerous examples of this, you will spot mistakes and you will see where it goes wrong, but your work increases dramatically in efficiency. Here's, however, the catch in my mind. So I'm throwing the easy questions to you, Professor, as always. So in my mind, that 0 to 5, random exam, 0 to 4 years of experience, 0 to 5 years of experience, specifically mostly in white collar jobs, as you said, it's not the electricians or the plumbers to be worried about this. It's, I don't know, the accountants and the lawyers and the coders and the program. 0 to 4 years of experience, you don't really add a lot of value because you're learning. Now, ChatGPT already can do most of the stuff better than whoever is just entering from university, starting. So I guess my question is, what will happen to, you're teaching, you have a lot of students at MIT. What will happen? How will they acquire that 0 to 4, 5, 6 years of experience?
It's It's a good question, excellent question. I touched it in my book and said this is one of the main problems. Because if I say that some of the new jobs will involve a lot of monitoring, I mean, working with the technology, but also monitoring the technology. You cannot monitor the technology if you just come off university, because you don't know actually much. You don't know about the company, how it works, everything around the company, the ecosystem. It's very hard to make judgments on this. You don't understand the context of where the company operates. So we need people with actually, let's call it 5 years experience. How do you hire people with 5-year experience? That's very hard, because assuming that AI can do all the simple jobs that people do. That's a real question. And I offer a few solutions in the book. First of all, I mentioned that in addition to the question of upskilling of existing worker to be able to understand. The upskilling is maybe somewhat easier, but there are so many opportunities to learn by yourself online today that there's no justification for you not taking your future in your hand and upgrading yourself. If your company does, some companies do it, by the way. Lots of companies actually do it. I mean, UPS is known. You are not going to be everybody who, until the last CEO, everybody at UPS started as either moving boxes or driving trucks. You know, then you became CEO. They're always promoting within and sending to school and educating. So many companies that they continue upscaling. But at the end of the day, telling everybody it's your responsibility. You have to keep with it, upgrade yourself. Now go to the process, and there are two solutions for the people just off school. One of them is the instant instruction. I don't know what to call it. You are a warehouse worker and you wear, augmented reality glasses. You don't need to understand how everything works, because in the glass it shows you, go there, pick these packages, and that's what in these packages requires special handling, and it goes there. So it's task-based, just for the next task, what to do. So technology helps there. So you start doing it, after a while you realize what's going on, you get experience. Another thing, I point to the German dual education system. So the United States should think seriously about this. In the German system, 55% of German high schoolers don't go to university. They apply to a company, and the company connects them with a local university, and they do 3-4 years, half time at the university, half time at the company. So basically do internship while they're learning. It's actually a cooperation between the German government, the companies, and the universities. The German government defined 350 something jobs, and this is right. It helps with the, money and all of this. But when people think 70% of them are then hired by the company where they were doing internship, because they now have experience, they know the theory, they know. So I suggested the United States should think about a system like this, because the system in the United States, in many ways, specifically in the United States, is broken. Because not only, system in a lot of places broken, but especially in the United States, because what is so atrocious in the United States is the high cost of college. And so people finish colleges with debts that they'll be carrying for 20, 30 years. And it means that they cannot start families on time, they cannot buy houses. It impacts the economy. So, of course, it's different. You get a computer science degree from MIT, okay, you're going to do fine. Or for Stanford, or from Carnegie, you're going to do fine. But very few people do it. I mean, a lot of people just go to university and get degrees that do not offer job opportunities. So I suggest that, first of all, funny coming from a university professor, but I firmly believe that in the United States, too many people go to college. There are lots of trade schools. And it gets personal. I had this argument with my granddaughter. My granddaughter is 18. She's going to college next year. I tried to tell her, why? Don't. It's coming to me, don't. Go try to think, what do you want to do with your life? And study that. And then you want to take courses in, ancient history, do it online. There are so many courses, do whatever you want. But there's social pressure. Peers go to college, you go with all her friends. So she's going to college. And it's because peer pressure, culture, it's just kind of expected. Her community, all her friends are doing. So it's part of culture here that's kind of hard to change. But this, I'm calling for it. It's because you're right. The problem are with startup jobs. because those jobs are going to be automated, whether it's a lawyer that does the, associate who do all the grunt work. The grunt work can now be done better and faster by AI. And you need a few people, experienced lawyers who will go over it. But their productivity will be so much higher now.
Yeah.
Because, by the way, they had to go over what the associate were doing anyway. I mean, because they're the one who go to court and have to argue the case. But the associate were learning. So companies may have to realize that they have to, hire maybe smaller number of people, but grow them. Just part of the cost of doing.
So I'll continue a little bit with the nuance. Now, you mentioned the example with the interconnecting those features that it took quite a few decades before they were disrupted. What I feel is different, the velocity, the speed. I mean, ChatGPT, the thing got 1 million users within a week. Like, I mean, okay, from there to actually using it with purpose, with efficiency, of course, there's a gap. But just, we're seeing this acceleration of adoption that we've never been seen before. Yeah, so it used to take a bit longer. Now it takes all of a sudden quite fast. I mean, if I look at my daughter, 9 years old, I mean, I don't think she cares that much if she gets the summary of something from from ChatGPT or from an actual professor at school anymore. So I think kids, they are open slate, like you were talking about your granddaughter, yeah, because she already has the cultural peer pressure. But the younger they are, they don't have that necessarily. So that's the question. I'll read you the question because it's a good question from Steve. He says, how to transition the workforce with minimal disruption, because his point is, when we convert, it was easy to teach a horse rider to drive a car or a forklift. It was easier than converting a forklift operator now, which, okay, can be augmented with AI, but converting that forklift operator to a knowledge worker, configuring AI models to run a warehouse is quite different complexity of a task. So that's a little bit the nuance here, or the question, how to do it.
So let me, first of all, several answers for this. First of all, I'm less worried about converting the warehouse worker, because the warehouse worker knows how to run an iPad. And this will be as easy as running an iPad, because the user interface now are becoming so easy to use that this is not going to be the issue, because it's like working with a joystick or working with the iPad. You can make the robot do whatever you want. So that's I'm less worried about this. But let me agree with him that I made a point in the book that in previous industrial revolution, there were involved a lot of physical objects. So when steam came about, you have to change how warehouses were laid out. You have to build steam engines. And it's all physics. It's all, hardware, and it takes time to do, and it takes time. Today, you develop a new algorithm, and in the press of a button, it's all over the internet, it's everywhere. You don't need to, because it's software, and people already have the hardware that they need. They don't even need the hardware, because there's clouds, and somebody else, and Google, and Amazon, AWS, and Azure. They have the hardware already. So you don't even need the hardware. So it goes fast. I acknowledge this is the case, it goes fast. But there's several reasons why it goes slow, why it's not going to be as fast as people think. First of all, by the way, some AI is already there. We don't even realize it. When you open your iPhone and it looks at your face, it is an AI program that looks at your face and decides that it's you. Looks at a lot of stuff. So there are many AI programs, the robots that are running in warehouses, autonomous vehicles. It's all AI. So it's there. AI is there already. But when we talk about some of the tasks we're talking about with the new generative AI, not going to work as fast as people think, even though the algorithm can fit, because there's several other issues. First of all, acceptability by society. So we start going back to my airline examples. As the airplane can go from gate to gate, nobody did that. Would any of your audience go on an airplane that will have no pilots? Nobody in the cockpit. In fact, there's no cockpit, just an aluminum tube with nothing in it, maybe some screens so you can watch what you're doing and play games, but that's about it. my guess is the percentage out of your audience who will do it is exactly zero. I mean, nobody will go on an airplane without a pilot. Would you feel comfortable when autonomous or trailer without a truck, without a driver are going behind you on a highway at 100 kilometers an hour? Maybe. Not so fast. Not so fast. So first of all, there's societal acceptance. And you just wait until autonomous trucks in the first accident, and there'll be an outcry. And just remember, or maybe you don't remember it. Even I don't remember it. But when the first cars came about in Chicago, when they introduced to the road, there used to be a person with a flag walking ahead of the car to alert the pedestrian that the car is coming. I mean, just because to make sure that people are afraid of accidents, the car will go out of. Then there are other issues why it will take time. There are labor unions. Labor unions are not keen on automating all their jobs, and they have power. Whether it's a teacher union or it's the, can you imagine? By the way, that's a combination of union and society acceptance. We can solve a lot of crime now with AI. We need a lot less police. I don't see too many cities, state, countries that will say, let's kill the police force. Let's do 90% of the jobs with AI. Yeah, it will help. It will help the police, but I don't see downsides. In fact, you add more specialists so they can look at, let's say, financial crime with AI and be more effective on it. So we have, and you see, labor union automating we're now in the middle of negotiation between the labor union in the Long Beach, LA port and the terminal operators who run them. A lot of it is about automation. The union is for automation. And if you look at Long Beach and LA, they're totally unlike, let's say, Dubai or Rotterdam or Singapore in terms of automation. They're a lot less efficient, but they use a lot more workers. So it's labor is on the way. And then regulations. Regulation will also be on the way. For example, the Italian government now basically outlaws generative AI, outlaws ChatGPT. The Chinese government is putting huge guardrails. Now, the Chinese, of course, have a different fear. The fear is that ChatGPT will start saying that maybe the Communist Party is not the best thing since sliced bread. So they want to control. And the way they control is very interesting. They control the training data. So
yes.
The training data is controlled, so they make sure that the results are not going to be something that is less harmonious to the Chinese society. That's how they describe it. So, and by the way, as in many other things, the Chinese are very effective. They know what they're doing. So they're understanding that they go to while the European and the American, how do we regulate and all this? They look how it works and say, that's the part that we should regulate. Exactly. I mean, not because once you regulate the training data, you control that. It's coming in, it's input and output. They control the input. It's a very clever way of doing it. That's how we should do it. But then we get into arguments about freedom of speech and
democracy and free speech and
democracy and privacy and freedom of speech and what people can do. Okay, but you have to admire the Chinese government for understanding how it works and which part to regulate. Very interesting. And so there are all these hurdles on the way. So yes, the algorithm, the development is going very fast. One should also understand that we didn't get to ChatGPT on one Friday afternoon. We started talking about expert system 50 years ago, and they develop and develop and develop until we got to generative AI, which also we needed, of course, the computational power to do it and the data access to do it. So we need the internet to develop to where it is and the computation power to develop to where it is. And before that, we couldn't really do it. There's another hurdle, just to mention, is the computation power. GPT-4 already scanned basically all the written words out there, or close to it. It took hundreds of millions of dollars to train, to get GPT. Well, and there's also, it goes right against sustainability initiative, because the computational power is using so much energy that people start saying, okay, we get people to write our email, but meanwhile we're, destroying the world. So maybe maybe you should think twice about it. So I'm just saying, yes, the algorithm work fast and spread very fast. These are not the real hurdles on the way. One last thing, the companies themselves. That's one of the things that makes me actually very positive. You know, when the internet started, we all thought that's great. Everybody will talk to everybody. We'll all love thy neighbor, and it will be fine. Nobody talked when the internet started. When we, you know, Netscape and all of this. Nobody talked about identity theft. Nobody talked about terrorists. You know, getting together on. Nobody thought about stealing data and privacy issues. No, we didn't think about it. Today, all the companies who work on generative AI have huge teams just looking at the safety and trying to make it safe. And you already see the beginning of guardrails. They're also calling for what they would like to see. That's amazing from such a competitive industry. They're also calling for government regulation because they would like to make sure that they compete, but they don't kill the goose that lays the golden eggs. So they themselves are calling for regulation. We just had a session with the person in Google who is the vice president of safety, something like this. I don't know her exact title, but she has a whole team that just worried about that. How to make sure that it's safe, how to make sure that it doesn't go awry. So the fact that the companies themselves are worried about all of this is a good sign.
Yeah. As we join, we have 10 more minutes, and I want to ask you one question, because you've set up 5 companies in your past, and most of it have been tech related, and you've sold them, you've fixed some big problems, you've sold them to big corporations. If you were to go from a tech angle again to solve a problem right now, what would you do? What would you tackle? What would you solve? I'm basically trying to steal your idea, Professor. So tell me, and then I'll do it myself.
No. I tell you, you're right. I had 5 companies, and after we sold the last one, and I tried to think about what next, my wife said, it's either another company or me. There was no question that she's not going to go ahead with me being both a professor and a CEO of a startup of another company. Because starting a company, especially if you also have a day job, is a full-time. I mean, there's no work-life balance. Forget about it. It's just work. And so my wife had it to one point. And since she was my wife for 54 years, same woman, I look, well, I'll stay with my wife. What the hell? But when I talk about one thing that I would not do, start an AI company. Because right now, there's a gold rush. Everybody and his brother start an AI company. 99% of them are going to fail because the VCs who don't know better just pour money in this area. And first of all, if you want to compete in this area, why would you choose as your competitor company like Google and Microsoft and Amazon? I mean, these are not big gorillas. These are humongous gorillas and capable and doing stuff. And these your competitors. Maybe you should think twice. That's one. Second, all doing it, it will be hard to distinguish yourself. Yeah, there will be some OpenAI was successful. That was before we all knew about ChatGPT and all of this. Now, of course, everybody knows about DALL-E 2 and ChatGPT and many others, of course. So I would not do it. I would still do the advice that I give everyone. I had 5 companies and I work with VC boards and all of this. So my students all over MIT come to me and come up with ideas. How do I start a company? How do I do it? Or even more, just look at what's the next best idea to start a company? And my guess is go work for a company, a real company, for a few months, a year, whatever. If you're not going to find 50 issues that don't solve well, the companies are wasting money, the companies are trapping all over themselves, then you're not looking, deep enough. Big companies can have so many issues, so many problems, and you will just find it, and then you realize that it's not that company, it's every other company has the same issue. So start with the problem, not with the solution. That's why I say I will not start an AI company. Let's start, or a blockchain company, anyone. Start with what it is that you are trying to solve. Okay, companies trying to solve visibility. Companies are trying to solve, network redesign. Companies, I'm just talking about There are existing already startups working in all of this area. So I must admit, I don't have a golden bullet here or a silver bullet. I would just start absolutely with a problem, not with a solution. That's my wise word for today.
When all you have is a hammer, the world is a nail. No, that's what.
Exactly. Start looking at where the nails should go, and then look if hammer is the right thing, or you can do it with your fist, just hammer it.
Love it. Now the last questions I want to poke you a little bit in the direction of education, and you mentioned your granddaughter. You're a professor of MIT. We've had these discussions before. How do you see education progressing? I mean, we are actually, if we think super positive, we are at the cusp of a revolution where we could have individualized student education.
Yes. But what you have is exactly what you had. The two issues that I mentioned are in the way, unfortunately. One of them is university professors. They don't want to lose their job.
Yeah.
Another thing is, for state universities, governments don't want to be the government that the opposition will say, ruin the future of our society because they close university. And then there's what I said, society's acceptance. My son got a degree from ChatGPT. Doesn't sound like as good as my son got a degree from University of Minneapolis or the University of Minnesota or whatever. So there's all these issues exist in education. But that's where you're absolutely right. And we see what happened. At the end, it will be the private sector who will lead. Because you saw, for example, with online education, yes, universities are doing it, and our program is very successful here at MIT. We just said in November, we had our millionth registrant for our online program. So we have actually an economic impact. But, we saw that several other Coursera and several others, private, enterprises jumped into the breach because universities are by nature slow. We are very good at preaching flexibility and agility to other. We are the least agile, the least flexible organization, some of the least agile on earth. So we don't move fast. It was a huge fight at MIT to start the program that I just mentioned. People thought, diminishing the MIT name. Nonsense. But this is what people feel. So I think the private sector will jump in. There'll be programs and you start thinking about it. What areas can say? I'm just mentioning an area. I have no knowledge on this. What area can Google get into? They already get into the medical field. They already get into starting to work in hospital and all this. What other big industries are there? Well, the other huge one is education. It's a huge industry, both millions of people, millions of workers. I think that it's bloated, it's inefficient, it's many ways teaches the wrong thing. The product doesn't live up to the money that you pay for it. So I would say that it will be private enterprise that will come. You see things like the Khan Academy. It's all Khan Academy that started private sector. Whether it will be done as charity or it will be done as for profit, but private sector will come in and say, we will give you AI-infused education, that it will give you questions, discover what you're good at, and teach you just the right of level that stretches you, but doesn't kill you. Of question of how the rate that we teach and all this, I think it will take a while to develop it because this needs real development, but the tools are already there. So look, we ourselves in our program at MIT, the online, it's called MicroMaster. You get a certificate, one semester worth of MIT work. We use a lot of AI internally because we are trying to predict when will people drop off the course. When people have to take 5 courses, and it's difficult, and people take it, at night and weekends while they work. So it's tough. So we have all the data. We have, hundreds of millions because every click is being recorded. Every click online is being recorded. So we know exactly. So we use a lot of machine learning to try to see to try to see the warning sign when people are going to drop off and need intervention. Now, we don't have yet the automatic intervention, but we already can identify when people are kind of start to look iffy. And we start to say, okay, let's somebody talk to them, then interview them, what's going on, and all this. So it's already used to diagnose a problem, not yet to solve it, but it's already, so some of it is already in use. Anyway, long answer to short question.
No, but it's like as always with you, Professor. I've given you this feedback before. I love your, your candor and your openness, and I think most people are either oblivious or afraid or will fight. Like we've always fought against, and you had a couple of examples whenever there was a new thing that we fought against it. So it's always great to hear your perspective. With this, I will approach the end to our interview. I mean, of course, we could go on for hours, and it would be my pleasure, but I'm mindful of your time. Again, I would encourage everybody to look up the book. It's an amazing read. Professor Sheffi, as I shared, as you've seen, is just what a great mind. Professor, thanks for joining us as always. It's been a pleasure, and keep inspiring people.
Thank you very much, Roger. My pleasure talking to you and the audience. Thank you very much for joining.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. If you liked what you heard, be sure to go to www.elcotglobal.com and click the podcast button for all the show notes of the interview. Also subscribe to our mailing list to get our latest updates first. If you're listening through a streaming platform like iTunes, Spotify or Stitcher, we would appreciate a kind review. 5-star works best to keep us going and our production team happy. And of course, share it with your friends. I'm most active on LinkedIn, so do feel free to follow me. And if you have any suggestions on what to do and who to invite next, don't hesitate to drop me a note. And if you're looking to hire top executives in supply chain or transform your business, of course, contact us as well to find out how we can help.